Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and today I am joined with Shor of Community Now, as always. But more importantly, we have Melony Weber, who is here from Touchstone Youth Resource Services, based out of Nashville, Tennessee.
I think that, you know, that story is very real to what's going on today, when we're talking about restructuring. I like to call it restructuring of the police, and I think that over time we've had our police force doing things that they just shouldn't have done, and they were complaining about it. Then our DA decided, well, heck, let's embrace it and become more than the police. But I don't think that that comes through in translation. I think the police have a certain function. I do cultural sensitivity training, and, we could talk about the history of the police with, minorities in this country and all of that. But I think what it really comes down to is that our communities need so much more mental health support than they do policing, as you're saying, just building those relationships, working on, as you're saying, your faith, but also just working on, again, the coping skills, the social and emotional aspect of our lives, respecting each other as humans, and being human, not being more than human, which is what our societies want us to be. Where I say, sometimes I either say we're either gods or we're computers, right? Because we're not allowed to have any flaws, so we've got to be one or the other. And in fact, we're not either. Right. So, and that's where I think the problem comes in. People faking it so much for so long, we dehumanize not only each other, but ourselves. We forget our humanity. And wow, that story that you're telling is really about, seeing the humanity in each other, and recognizing.
But a lot of these kids are not real, activated or not hadn't launched into activism. But there was a really great protest that 6 high school girls organized here in Nashville. I don't know if y'all saw it. It made national news because they were expecting a couple hundred people. 10,000 showed up.
Wow.
These girls were in charge. All the adults, like Equity Alliance, they're like, we can't take credit for this. It was those teenage girls. And one of the things that amazed me is they did it all on Instagram. And they had, here's what we will do, here's what we're not going to do, here's how we will act, here's how we're not going to. They had it down to the legit. Those girls had bullhorns, and they were in charge of 10,000 people. It was powerful.
Wow.
But a lot of the kids I know are just not interested, and I'm trying to figure out, do I razzle them? I mean, I'm a child of the 70s. I like protests, but I don't know if I need to rally them to get into, or just figure out where they are. It's like, if they don't feel a need to go join in with the protest, kind of, where are you?
One of the items that's particularly sensitive here in the Inland Empire, Southern California, and I believe does have national reach, is what we're calling defunding the police. At the core of it, should we have law enforcement in our schools?
My vote is no.
Well, I will say this. We have law enforcement in every high school in the Nashville area, and I think most middle schools. I'm not sure about elementary. I don't think so. But if they're trained and appropriate, because one of the favorite people that a student would never act out around in one particular school is a police officer. And he's known as OG which is kind of cool for them to call him OG, but it's Officer, I believe it's Gordon, I can't think of his last name, but he has so much respect. He understands the students. He genuinely cares. And I think if we have the right police officers in the school, it can help kids understand that not all police officers are bad. Sadly, what we've all seen are the bad ones, and there's a lot of bad things going on. I think there's an opportunity, if it's done well, if it's one more person to bully them, to slam them against the wall, to verbally berate them, no, we don't need that in our schools. That's just adding to the trauma. But it's an opportunity, if you have the right police officer, to really cultivate a relationship that helps a kid stay out of trouble. That's what I've seen in high schools.
Yeah, I don't think that cops have a place in schools until they fix their relationship. We're talking generational trauma. Black people have trauma for police. It's not even that we don't like them. We're scared to death of them. They kill us. They kill our uncles. They kill our moms. They kill us. They have no respect. So when you put that element on a school, no, there is no safety. And I don't understand how anyone would think there is, at least in a mental health perspective for people of color. Now, people that are not of color, they have great safety with police. You know, they feel very safe with police. So maybe it's a cultural thing, and maybe it should be in some areas should have police, but in other areas, I think it helps propagate the many things. It helps propagate trauma, because every time the youth sees the cop, they're traumatized. Having to interact with them without it being voluntary is another form of trauma. Right. The fact that the parents have no control over what those police do to the child is traumatizing. So I would say that, yeah, no, what we should do is keep them completely away. When there is an instance where a child unfortunately has done something in the mediation, we've had, you know, us mental health support professionals on the campus working. I think it would reduce the conflict simply having us on the campus working, number one. But then if there is a situation, for us to be there to help de-escalate and teach the students how to de-escalate themselves, I think is what is needed at a school site.
Yeah, and it's interesting because and I'm glad we're talking about the black-white racial thing, because some people said that the first school that we had a presence, that Touchstone had a presence on, it was predominantly Black. I'm a middle-aged white person, I know that. And so this goes back like 14 years. And a lot of people were like, oh, I don't know if you can be effective here. And I get it, but I learned quickly, if you cultivate a trusting relationship, it doesn't matter. But one time a basketball coach pointed out something. He specifically said, he'd kind of given his basketball team for us to mentor. And most of the kids, if not all in that particular year, were Black for the most part. And so anyway, one of the things the coach says, it is so important to have white people here. And that caught me off guard. And he said that many of his kids are mixed. And the white part of their family has had nothing to do with them their entire lives. He said the idea, and that's traumatic, but having white people in a loving, caring relationship with these particular students was something needed, and that never occurred to me. And you know, the idea that, yeah, this is a great social experiment, but to have like a young man who might have lost his father to a police violence, to use that somehow in a healing way, it would be very, it'd have to be very orchestrated, because it's such a deep, dark history in terms of how people of color have been treated. But it never occurred to me that the people that had hurt, that I'm the same color as the people who've hurt them the most. I was at a funeral for a young man's mom, and she was white. And I did not know this going in, but the only part of his family who had ever had, of his mom's side of the family, who had ever had anything to do with him was his great-grandmother, his mom's grandmother. And so I'm sitting in the funeral, and there's the white side of the church and the Black side of the church. And I was sitting over, and they did a receiving line, and his grandfather, his mom's dad, who's white, was there. And part of me, I didn't want to shake the man's hand. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And I just decided, because I think he'd only seen the children 2 or 3 times in their lives, had no relationship with them, and offered them nothing but hurt, basically. And I knew the oldest child was a high school student, but I decided, okay, I'm not gonna drop out of the line as we get to that side of the family. And so when I got to the grandfather, I introduced myself and I told him my connection to the whole situation and that how I knew his grandson who was in high school. And he told me, he said, no, that's right. He said, until yesterday, I had never met Umar. And he said, I'm never going to let another day go by where I don't have him involved in my life. And I'm just thinking, I wish I'd started about 16 years ago. That would have been nice. And he actually made a point from then on to stay involved with those kids. But I just thought, you know what? We need to, white people need to figure it out. We don't need to burden, you know, the kids or the families of color to teach, you know, it's like, you know what, y'all have been in a lot of uncomfortable situations. White people have to put ourselves in some uncomfortable situations now when it comes to healing these traumas. And this is, I mean, this is a three-parter right there. But it has been powerful to see how we can, you know, take a person in a role that has caused great harm. And I realized that I'm looked at suspiciously. One girl actually said, thought I had you figured out, Ms. Weber. One more little white lady trying to save a lot of black kids. And I went, no, that's not me. And she goes, I know that now, you know, because they're part of, you know, this big picture of how things, you know, this kind of healing, a big woven piece of healing in these lives. But everybody, you know, for them to have a white person who trusts them, it's like, oh, here, hold my purse for me. I've had more kids say, couldn't believe that you let me hold your purse. And it offered some healing because they always expected, you know, oh, any white person would be clutching their purse and running to the other side of the street or something. It's like, oh, hang on my car keys, hold my purse, watch my child while you're at it. You know, you trust me? And it's and so, you know, there's a lot of healing to do in that area. And again, and that feeds right into the original police question. Definitely, I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. Everything Shor said, I agree.
Everything Mel said, I agree.
Outstanding. But I have one more question, and it's a short question. So think before you speak. You will have 15 seconds to respond.
Uh-oh.
And we will start with our guest, Ms. Weber. One thing you learned while visiting with Shor.
Really?
It's never too early to start making a huge difference in a person's life. I think that's it. That she's brave enough to step in the waters really, really young, and I think that's powerful. And it has, the younger you start, the longer, the more impact you're going to have, and I admire that.
Sure, same question. One thing you learned, 15 seconds, from visiting with Mel.
Well, I learned that there's a dynamic program in Nashville and that there are way more like-minded people that have been working at this even longer than me that are making a difference. I think that working with high schoolers is very challenging. So I'm going to have to say for Touchstone that bravo, you know, to be able to do and make the impact that you've made over the years. I'm very excited and happy to hear that SEL is in Tennessee. I always thought of the South as being very late with things, and you're not. You're actually progressive, so I think that's amazing.
Well, again, Glenn W. Hunter, the 3 C's of SEL, Touchstone Youth Resources, Touchstone Youth Resource Services. Thank you for bringing them down here into the desert, the Inland Empire, Mel.
Thank you for having me.
We'll have to do this more.
Sure,
Let's do it. I'm in.
Again, thank you.